Kevin Hart walked into that courtroom thinking he was doing the right thing. He spoke with passion, stood beside Cassie, and told the world that silence had gone on for too long. But what he didn't know was that Diddy had been waiting for this. Just one day after Kevin's explosive testimony, Diddy struck back. His defense attorneys entered new evidence. They called it relevant to motive, but the courtroom knew better. This wasn't just defense. This was retaliation. In a stunning twist, Diddy exposed Kevin Hart, alleging that Hart wasn't just a bystander, but someone who had once been far closer to the darkness than he let on. And as the court leaned in, Diddy's team laid out footage, documents, and text messages that threatened to destroy Hart's credibility in one blow. What was supposed to be Kevin's moment of bravery had just turned into a firestorm. On day 5 of the trial, Kevin Hart shocked everyone by showing up unannounced and testifying in support of Cassie Ventura. His appearance had been voluntary, emotional, and completely unexpected. The courtroom hung on his every word as he described what he'd seen. Whispers of locked doors, crying women, parties that no longer felt like parties. He didn't claim to have proof. He wasn't there to destroy anyone. He was there to back someone up who had finally spoken out. The response was immediate. Online, fans hailed him as courageous. Media outlets covered the appearance as a turning point, and Cassie herself was visibly moved, her testimony no longer floating in isolation, but reinforced by one of the most recognizable voices in entertainment. But while the public praised Hart's bravery, inside the courtroom, something else was happening. Diddy's defense team didn't flinch. They didn't interrupt. They let Kevin speak, but they were taking notes. By the end of day 5, as Kevin left through the side exit, cameras tried to catch him. He kept his head down. The defense team stayed late into the evening. What were they planning? Most thought it would be a strategic rebuttal, maybe an attempt to discredit his character through past statements or affiliations. No one expected what came next, because Diddy wasn't just going to challenge Kevin's story, he was going to flip the narrative completely. And by the time the courtroom reconvened on day 6, that strategy was already in motion. The courtroom was still buzzing from Kevin Hart's surprise testimony the day before when Diddy's defense team made their move. They opened the morning with a sealed motion, one that took both the prosecution and spectators off guard. Filed under the guise of relevant motive and witness credibility, it requested the court to admit previously undisclosed material related to Hart's own connection to the inner workings of Diddy's world. The judge reviewed it in chambers. Cassie's team objected immediately, but the judge ruled partially in Diddy's favor. The material could be introduced under strict procedural limitations. That meant a courtroom without a gallery for the initial presentation, and with Kevin Hart in the room. Kevin didn't look panicked when he returned, but he wasn't smiling either. His shoulders were tight. His lawyer sat closer than usual. Diddy's attorney stood and delivered the line that would change the energy in the room completely. The witness who came forward yesterday failed to disclose his deeper familiarity with the very spaces and practices he now condemns. Then they played a clip, grainy footage, with no audio, time-stamped from a party in 2018. The location wasn't named, but the mansion layout resembled one already identified by Cassie in her testimony. The video showed a man, face partially blurred for legal purposes, entering a restricted hallway behind 2 assistants. The man, the defense claimed, was Kevin Hart. More footage followed. Short, silent clips of Kevin arriving at events, chatting with known figures in Diddy's inner circle. Nothing illegal was shown, but the implication was strong. Hart was not just a guest. He was someone with deeper access. Then came the real hit, a text message exchange, allegedly between Kevin and an unnamed associate. In it, Kevin writes, "That setup in the basement is wild. You ever go down there during a session?" The reply is redacted, but the defense read it aloud anyway. They claimed this proved knowledge of the tunnel system Cassie described. And more than that, it made Hart's previous statement, where he said he never went downstairs, suddenly seem incomplete. Kevin didn't speak. His lawyer objected on multiple grounds: hearsay, mischaracterization, lack of context. The judge sustained only part of it, but the damage was done. Suddenly, Kevin Hart wasn't the hero. He was the headline. The prosecution tried to recover, but the tone had changed. Kevin Hart had been seen by the public as an outsider, someone who had drifted through Diddy's orbit, noticed something wasn't right, and decided to speak out. But now the jury was being told that he might have been far closer than he ever admitted, that he might have walked those those same halls, that he might have known and said nothing. The prosecutor pushed back, framing the defense's tactic as a smear campaign. "We are not here to try Kevin Hart," she said. "We are here because Mr. Combs is on trial for a decade of calculated abuse." But the judge interjected, "Credibility of a voluntary witness is fair ground if the defense believes it speaks to motive." The room went quiet. Then Diddy's lawyer dropped the most controversial claim yet, that Kevin Hart may have originally agreed to testify not out of altruism, but out of fear, because he knew he might be implicated later. He hinted at unspoken threats and suggested that Hart came forward to get ahead of a story that was going to come out anyway. Kevin stayed silent, not a word. He looked down. He shook his head slightly, but he never interrupted. And outside that silence, the internet exploded. Social media turned within minutes. Clips of the trial leaked. Screenshots of the alleged messages made their way onto forum. Hashtags flipped. Number sign Kevin knew started trending. Some defended him, claiming Diddy was trying to drag anyone down with him. Others weren't so sure. In the span of 24 hours, Kevin Hart had gone from a voice of truth to a man under suspicion. And in the courtroom, that silence spoke louder than anything else. The courtroom was tense. Kevin Hart's reputation, his credibility as a witness, was suddenly on trial. The moment Diddy's defense presented those messages, the silent video, and the insinuations of past knowledge, everyone turned to see what Kevin would do. But he didn't speak. He stayed seated, motionless, while his attorneys rose to respond. Kevin's lead counsel, a high-profile entertainment lawyer known for handling defamation battles, addressed the judge directly. "We categorically reject the claim that Mr. Hart was ever involved in or aware of any criminal activity within Mr. Combs's private properties," she said. "This is an intentional smear attempt by the defense to deflect from the gravity of Ms. Ventura's allegations." She argued that the footage shown was manipulated, cropped, and selectively presented. "There is no context, no audio, no proof of misconduct. Mr. Hart walked into events hosted by a celebrity peer. The idea that his presence in a hallway implies complicity is as absurd as it is dangerous." Then she turned to the text messages. "These messages are vague, presented without verification, and do not confirm who the recipient is, what the subject matter refers to, or whether they were even sent during the time in question." The judge nodded, but allowed the defense a rebuttal. Diddy's team countered that while the evidence didn't convict Hart of anything, it raised fair questions about his motive for testifying. "If he was once part of this world," the attorney argued, "his sudden moral outcry rings hollow, and it gives the jury reason to view his testimony with a different lens." The jury shifted. Some looked down, some watched Kevin. But the public outside wasn't waiting for legal nuance. Headlines were changing rapidly. Articles appeared within hours with phrases like "Kevin Hart under scrutiny" and "hero to hypocrite." Still, Kevin said nothing. As court broke for recess, he walked out flanked by security, head low. He didn't speak to reporters. His team released a single-line statement: "We deny all implications made in court today and will address them in due time." But the damage was already underway, and inside the courtroom, the silence was cracking open new questions. Outside the courthouse, the story took on a life of its own. Within hours of Diddy's defense unveiling the alleged footage and messages, social media went from celebrating Kevin Hart's testimony to dissecting every moment of his past relationship with Diddy. Clips from past interviews resurfaced, screenshots from red carpets. A viral montage emerged on TikTok. Kevin joking about Diddy in interviews, awkward party photos, moments that once felt harmless, but now carried a new, uncomfortable undertone. "Y'all remember when Kevin said Diddy always threw the weirdest parties?" One user wrote on X. "Looked like a joke then. Feels like a warning now." Hashtags flipped. Kevin knew, "Why now Kevin?" and Tunnel Talk trended for nearly 24 hours. Some fans defended him, insisting the footage meant nothing. "Walking through a hallway doesn't make you guilty," one fan posted. Others weren't so forgiving. "Why didn't he bring this up in his testimony?" people ask. Why omit it unless he had something to hide? A few insiders joined the fray. A former party planner tweeted, "Kevin was at more events than he admitted. We all saw him. He wasn't just passing through." That post was deleted within an hour, but the screenshots remained. News outlets fed off the chaos. Entertainment blogs pushed clickbait headlines, Kevin Hart caught in Diddy crossfire, and comedian turned witness now under fire. The court of public opinion was already in session, and Kevin was losing ground. Some viewers now questioned whether Kevin had testified to protect himself, not Cassie. That theory grew quickly, that Kevin saw the walls closing in and stepped forward early to rewrite the narrative, painting himself as a brave outsider instead of a reluctant insider. Kevin's silence wasn't helping. His team declined multiple interview requests. His scheduled podcast appearance that week was quietly pulled from the platform, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Kevin, the man known for never staying quiet, was suddenly nowhere to be found. What was once a bold act of conscience now looked to many like damage control. When the judge finally unsealed portions of the evidence submitted by Diddy's legal team, the public got their first confirmed look at what the defense had been holding back. It wasn't as explosive as social media had imagined, but it wasn't insignificant either. The first document was a guest registry from a private estate party in 2018. Kevin Hart's name appeared alongside over 50 others, including known figures in Diddy's production circle. The defense had claimed this was one of the events now under federal review, due to other witness testimonies alleging coercive behavior and restricted access areas. The second document was a scanned screenshot of a text conversation, allegedly pulled from a seized device belonging to a former staffer. In it, a number saved as KH references that setup downstairs and asks, "Was that just for them, or does it run all the time?" While the defense claimed this was Kevin Hart, no verification was presented beyond the contact initial. The prosecution objected to its admissibility, but was overruled in part. Finally, there was a written statement, heavily redacted, submitted anonymously by a former assistant. The person claimed they saw Kevin Hart escort a high-profile guest away from the main party during a VIP segment of the night. No wrongdoing was assigned directly, but the implication was that Kevin had more access than he led the court to believe. In open court, the judge addressed the documents carefully. These materials raise questions, but do not constitute evidence of criminal action. They are being admitted solely as context for witness credibility. But that context was enough. Suddenly, the narrative changed. Kevin's previous testimony about being on the outside looking in now felt incomplete. His claim that he never went past a certain point was under a microscope. And with the tunnel systems and restricted basement areas being central to Cassie's case, any suggestion that Kevin had seen them or asked about them shifted the courtroom energy. Kevin's attorneys asked for the record to reflect that he had never been formally accused of wrongdoing and was not under investigation. The judge obliged. But as the jury sat quietly reviewing their notes, the message was clear. In Diddy's effort to protect himself, he had turned the light on someone else. And now, Kevin Hart was caught in it. By the end of the day, legal commentators, court reporters, and even former prosecutors began to weigh in on what had just unfolded in court. Diddy's defense team had successfully shifted attention, at least temporarily, off of Cassie's testimony and onto the credibility of Kevin Hart. But was this a brilliant strategy or a desperate swing? In the eyes of some, it was textbook defense maneuvering. Muddy the waters, question everyone's reliability, and hope the jury begins to doubt the narrative. One legal analyst put it plainly, "This trial isn't just about what Diddy did. It's about how believable the people accusing him are. If you can make the hero look questionable, you weaken the entire story." But others saw something far more frantic. You don't blow up a witness unless you're scared of what they reveal. One former federal investigator noted, "Diddy waited until Kevin's testimony landed with the public. Then he retaliated. That's not confidence. That's panic." There's another layer to this strategy. the risk. Because by dragging Kevin into the muck, Diddy's team had opened the door for even more scrutiny. The prosecution now had new grounds to explore Kevin's past, yes, but it also gave them leverage to dig deeper into Diddy's network. And while Kevin's silence might have looked suspicious to some, others recognized it as something else. Fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of blackballing, fear of becoming another public casualty in a trial that was consuming everyone it touched. Back in the courtroom, the judge issued a formal warning to all parties. This trial will not become a circus of personal attacks. Let me remind everyone, Mr. Combs is the one on trial, not his guests, not his peers. Still, the point had been made. Kevin Hart's story now had holes, or at least the illusion of holes. And illusion in a courtroom can be just as dangerous as fact. Some jurors reportedly looked less convinced. Some glanced down at their notes, flipping pages back to Kevin's earlier testimony. Others stared at Diddy, who, for the first time in days, sat upright, calm, almost smug. If this was a chess game, Diddy had just sacrificed a pawn, but put the queen under pressure. As court recessed that afternoon, Kevin Hart was escorted out a back entrance, surrounded by 2 attorneys and 3 plainclothes officers. Reporters shouted questions. None were answered. For the first time in his career, Kevin was experiencing something few comedians or public figures could prepare for: a credibility crisis on a national stage and under oath. Inside his team's war room, the debate was raging. Should Kevin speak publicly again? Should he issue a rebuttal video? Go on a podcast? Drop receipts of his own? The answer, for now, was silence. And that silence had its own cost. Critics online weren't waiting. They were dissecting every public interaction Kevin ever had with Diddy. Memes, TikToks, deep dives. One thread on Reddit tracked every time Kevin was seen at a Diddy-affiliated event between 2015 and 2020. It included screenshots, timestamps, even plain law. Whether any of it was legally valid didn't matter. The internet had built its own courtroom, and Kevin was on trial. Even longtime fans felt torn. One comment summed it up: "I want to believe Kevin's the good guy, but why didn't he tell the full truth the first time?" Kevin's team issued a follow-up statement later that night. It read, "Mr. Hart stands by every word of his testimony. He is cooperating fully with court procedures and will not be engaging in a media circus created to distract from the actual allegations in this case. It was measured, controlled, safe, but it didn't stop the speculation. And behind closed doors, Kevin reportedly wrestled with the emotional toll. According to someone close to his team, he felt blindsided, not by Diddy's tactics, but by how quickly public support had turned. He had come forward, he believed, to do the right thing, and now he was being painted as just another liar in the house. So what now? That was the question echoing through every entertainment boardroom, talent agency, and PR office in Los Angeles. Would Kevin push back? Would he reveal more? Would he, like so many others, quietly step out of the spotlight and wait for the storm to pass? Or would he take the stand again and finish the story he started? The courtroom felt like a different world. The trial that had begun with a focus on Cassie Ventura's lawsuit and allegations of sex trafficking had morphed into something far bigger. The gallery was filled with new reporters, new attorneys representing unnamed parties, and federal agents who now sat in the back, silent and observing. Because now the trial wasn't just about Diddy. It was about every famous name connected to him, every star who once laughed on camera with him, every guest who flew to private islands or attended invitation-only events. With Kevin Hart's name now publicly dragged into the center, the question loomed: who else was on that guest list? Who else had knowledge and stayed silent? The prosecution, sensing momentum shifting, began shifting tactics. They stopped portraying Diddy as a lone predator and began painting him as the centerpiece of a much larger machine, a machine powered by silence, loyalty, and fear. Kevin Hart's testimony had opened the door. Diddy's response had blasted it off its hinges. More subpoenas were rumored to be on the way. Another celebrity, unnamed in court, had reportedly agreed to a private deposition. Sources whispered that even more names would be dragged into the proceedings, some willingly, some not. Meanwhile, Cassie remained calm. She was spotted leaving the courthouse quietly, hand in hand with her husband. She had said what she needed to say. The rest, it seemed, was being handled by the ripple ripple she started. Kevin, for now, stayed out of sight, but no one forgot what he said or what was said about him. And now, as the trial barrels toward deeper revelations and even more high-profile involvement, one truth remains. Diddy may be the man in the defendant's chair, but the web around him is growing wider by the day. And this story, it's far from over.